What's up, YouTube? Pictures by Schoolboy back again. Welcome to another Photoshop tutorial. So, as usual, in today we are going to learn something new. This is a picture I shot about, I think around somewhere last year. I don't really remember, but this is the picture we are going to use in today's tutorial. It already looks amazing, but today we are going to make it looks more better. I've tried recording this tutorial about 4 times, but anytime I'm done recording and I check the footage, it seems it has been freezing a lot, and I've fixed some couple of issues with my screen recorder and a whole lot, and I'm hoping this also doesn't freezes. I've done some tests, and I think we are good to go now. So before we get started, you already know, please make sure to subscribe for amazing content every week, and don't forget to turn on the post notification bell to get notified anytime I put up a new video. So the first thing we are going to do is to perform the frequency separation. So I'm just going to go straight into frequency separation, perform it, and then we get to the fun part, which is the color grading. So I'm going to fast forward this part just not to make this video long, as you already know the basic steps to do the frequency separation. As a matter of fact, if you don't know, I have a free frequency separation action. I'm going to link it down in the description so that you can download it and use it for your images. So with further ado, I'm just going to go straight into the frequency separation and catch you guys on the color grading. The next thing that I'm going to do is to create a duplicate layer of the background, and then select the patch tool and remove some little imperfections on her shirt and on the skin as well. So I'm going to skip, not really skip, I'm going to fast forward this part too, and I'm going to catch you guys when I'm done. So guys, I'm done removing the little imperfection, so I'm just going to go ahead and merge the layers and get straight into the color grading this. So the first thing that I always do when I'm color grading is to work with the eyes and the teeth before I get into the color. So I'm going to run my eyes and teeth action, and I'm going to make the eyes a little bit whiter, and then when I'm done with it, I'm going to go straight into the color grading. So as you can see, I have selected my brush and I make sure the foreground color is white. So I'm going to zoom in and paint on the eyes, and after I'm done, I'm going to bring down the opacity so that it looks more appealing to the eye. Yeah, so it's not going to take that much time. Retouching, you don't have to spend hours retouching. I used to do that a whole lot when I started photography. I thought retouching was so difficult, so I used to spend hours and hours on pictures only to check them out on my phone and see that it doesn't really look amazing, until I changed my mindset about how to retouch. So I'm done with it. I think it's a little too much, so I'll bring down the opacity to let's say 73. I think 73 is fine. Yeah, so the next thing we are going to do now is to go to selective color and play with the individual colors. So we will start with the white. As you can see, there are a lot of white in this image, so we are going to bring up the cyan of the white just a little bit to add some blues to these areas. So when we are done, we are going to bring down the yellows to make it look a little more cold, just like this. Yeah, so the next thing I'm going to move on to is the yellows, and the yellows I'm going to play with the cyans too, just a little bit, to make the background, the grass at the background, a little more green. So I'm going to bring the cyans up, and let's see what the yellows. No, I don't think I'm going to add yellow, so let's leave it on 0 and move on to the reds. So the reds, there are a lot of reds in the skin tone. The skin tones consist of reds and yellows, depending on the kind of skin color the person has. If she's a dark skin person, it's going to comprise of different colors. So with this person's skin, we are going to play with the reds a little bit. I'm going to bring down the cyans and open up the reds to add a little bit of color to the reds here. So I think 40 is fine, and I'm going to add just a little bit of yellows so that it doesn't look weird. So I think +9 for the yellows is also fine. Yeah, so let's see what we can do with the greens too. I don't think there are much greens in this picture, but we are going to try out and see. Yeah, I don't think so, only this part. So we are going to leave it just like that and move on. Alright, so the next thing that we are going to do is to go to the color balance. After color balance, we go to hue and saturation. That's what I always do. I keep everything simple as possible. So we have our shadows, midtones, and highlights. I always start with my shadows, come to the highlight before the midtones, because as we all know, the midtones lies in between the shadows and the highlight. So if you start with the midtones, it's going to look a little bit off, as you know. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So I'll start with the shadows, and I'm going to see what I can do. So I think I'm going to add more reds. I can bring down the opacity at any time. So, and let's see if I'm going to add magentas or greens. I think magentas. I think I'm going to leave here on 0 and add a little bit of blues. I always add blues to my shadows. I don't know why. It looks so good to my eye. I always add blues to my shadows. Yeah, so I'm done with the shadows. Let's move on to the highlights and see what we can do with the highlights too. So we are going to add more cyans to the highlights. I think -13 is fine. And we are going to add more blues to the highlight as well. So I think +10 is okay. Then we move on to the midtones. The midtones affect the overall colors of the image, so you make sure you don't do too much with the midtones, and even if you do too much, the opacity is always there to save your ass. So I think I'm going to add more cyan. I don't know with the more cyan looks great with this image. Let's see. No, I'm going to leave the magentas and the greens on 0 and see. No, I'm going to add just a little bit of yellows. So I think -3 is fine. So we are done with the color balance. Here is a little before and after. It transformed the images so well. It transformed the image so well. So here is a quick before and after. It looks amazing right now. I'm really happy. I wish you could see the smile on my face right now. Yeah, so let's move on. The next thing we are going to do is to go to the hue and saturation adjustment layer, and we are going to increase the opacity of some few colors like the greens and the reds and the yellows and the cyans. So let's move on to the greens and add a little bit of saturation. So I think 10 is okay, +10 is okay. Let's move on to the reds. And the reds, as I said earlier, the skin tones consist of reds and yellows. So I'm going to play with the hue of the reds to kind of change the color of the skin tone just a little bit. So I'm going to bring it up to let's say +5, and I'm going to add +5 of saturation, and then I move on to the cyans and add a little bit of cyans. So I think +13 is fine, and then I'll move on to the master to add a pinch of overall saturation. I think +3 is fine. So here is the before and after of the hue and saturation. It's not too much, it's okay. So let's put all in a folder and see how far we've come. So here is the before and here is the after. Before, after. It looks really good right now. So the last thing I want to do now is to add a little bit of depth. So what I'm going to do is to click on the adjustment layers and go to the curves, the levels, and I'm going to add a little bit of punch to the image. So I think +8 is fine. I've made the shadows more. I've added depth to the shadows, and I think it looks amazing. So here is the before and after. It looks amazing right now. So we are done color grading this image in some few minutes. It would have been a little faster if it wasn't a tutorial. So the last thing is to sharpen the image. I have a video on how to sharpen and crop your image for Instagram. So if you haven't checked that video out, I'll leave a link to that video in the description, or I'll leave it, and I'll also create a tag that you can click on it up here to check out that video. So I'm going to go straight and add sharpness to the image, and that will be it for today's video. So let's move on. I'm going to create a stamp visible layer of all the layers below. So we hit Shift Control Alt plus E, and the stamp visible layer has been created. So I'll just move on to filter and convert it to smart object. When it's done converting, I'll go to filter again, order, and then high pass, and then I'll choose my radius for the image, and I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to overlay. Yeah, so I'm done sharpening the image, and it looks So nice. So before I close out the video, let's check out the before and after again. Before and after. Before, after. It looks amazing. Yeah, so that will be it for today's video. I really hope you learned something new from this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for weekly tutorials, tips and tricks, and everything you need to know about photography. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.